Okay, well, welcome to our 21st Pharma multi-channel marketing meetup. And today's is entitled Up the Impact of Your Digital Products, Lessons from Global Pharma Professionals. Your hosts for this Pharma MCM are me, Christine Mackay, award-winning founder of business animation studios, Salamander UK, where we help our clients to visually convey complex messages using static, motion, and immersive design onto any platform, as well as James Harper. He's consultant, speaker, and founder of 28B, where they inspire brand teams, medical teams, and their agencies to unlock the potential of Viva and OCE to enable and empower the multi-channel rep, CAM, and MSL. So what we're about is James and I founded this group back in October 2018 for anyone working in the pharma industry interested in learning more about multi-channel marketing, featuring presentations from channel experts from in and out of the industry, and members are encouraged to share best practice, ABPI compliant case studies, and we always welcome group discussion at the end of the wrap up of our events. So our format is that we have several speakers on various relevant topics with a Q&A at the end of the session. So please put your questions into the Q&A section and we'll get to them and we'll get them answered after the presentations. We're recording this session and it'll be available on our Pharma MCM YouTube channel soon after the session, and we'll keep you posted as to when it's up so that you can share it with others. So far on this group, we've got 1,036 members. We've had over 1,446 bums on seats, and we've got over 101 guests today, which is fantastic. And today's topic is covered by Graphite, a digital customer experience agency that collaborates with healthcare and pharmaceutical organizations to deepen audience connection through meaningful digital experiences by helping clients create effective digital products using strategy, user research, and UX/UI design. We're going to discover 10 things the team at Graphite learned from speaking to 450 global pharma professionals about how they are currently approaching their digital products, services, and strategies, and the big opportunities that were highlighted for leaders and managers who want to embrace change and stand out from the crowd. So our speakers today are John Hume, Commercial Director at Graphite Digital. He's an experienced digital and user experience strategist with a passion for helping businesses leverage technology. Then we have Thomas Michalak, the Creative Director at Graphite Digital. He has been making a positive impact in healthcare and pharma using patient-centric design and UX research for over 8 years. And then we have Kerry O'Connor, who is the marketing lead at Graphite Digital. She's passionate about helping agencies grow through a unified approach to marketing and new business and a well-defined strategy centered around reaching the right people at the right time through the right channels. So over to you, gang.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. Yes, I'm Kerry O'Connor, marketing lead at Graphite. I'm going to be driving the presentation today. Looking forward to hearing lots of questions. So I'm going to switch into the presentation. Let's get that going. Okay, great. So yes, as Christina said, we're going to run through some research that we did with Reuters events at the beginning of this year with 450 pharma professionals. So we'll be taking you through the kind of 10 key things that we learned. This is available to download. There's a lot more kind of rich content that you can read. But like we said, we're going to run through the key highlights. Hopefully you'll find them interesting and you'll learn lots from it. First of all, just to recap, yes, we are a digital customer experience agency. Our clients are in health and pharma across the world. 90% are international. We work with clients such as Amrite, Astellas, CSL, the NHS, Pfizer, VHI in Ireland, the biggest healthcare company in Ireland. And yeah, lots of years of experience that we bring to the table. As you know, you're hearing from John, myself, and Toma today. But just to talk a little bit about the research. So we've done a piece of research back at the beginning of the year with Reuters, and we called it the Contradiction Conundrum, a little bit of a mouthful there, all about the different contradictions that there are in the pharma sector. And you'll see these coming through as we talk in more detail. We did speak to 450 professionals globally across a variety of different roles, different functions, different levels, across all continents. and the research was a mix of qual and quant questions. And what was really encouraging was the honesty of the respondents. And I think it was just really interesting to find out about their challenges and why success levels are often low when it comes to digital products kind of launches. And when I'm talking about digital products and services, I'm talking about websites and apps. So it's not launches of drugs. So yeah, it's all in the kind of digital space. So yeah, lots of honest responses, lots of learnings. And like I said, we're going to run through the 10 things. I'm going to kick off with the first one. And that's all around digital product success rates in pharma are incredibly low. So this might be a surprise. This may not be a surprise. What we do know is that over the last 3 years or so with the pandemic, there was a big urgency and a big need to digitize. So there was some great work happening, but there wasn't to that velocity, and it wasn't in a way that's joined up, where different teams can learn from each other, and maybe not with the right expertise in-house. But what we do know is that the success was really based on just getting things launched. It wasn't really about having a great customer experience and having really great engagement. So the first stat that we're going to throw to you from the report is that only 4% of digital pharma products launches regularly succeed. So quite hard hitting that only 4%. I mean, anything else in your life, if it was only successful for 4%, you'd probably be quite horrified. But what it does show is that there is good work going on, and also there's a great opportunity for all those businesses out there that really do want to lead the way and they want to do things differently. So we will talk more about why we think this is so low, and some of the things that as a business you need to think about. So I'm going to pass over to John, and he's going to do a few more of the points, and then we'll go to Thomas, and then I'll come back and I'll see you at the end.
Thank you, Kerry. So we've established that the success rates for digital and pharma are very low. That might line up with your personal experience. I hope not always, but I think it's an honest reflection of what we've seen come back from the respondents. Let's have a look at some of the reasons why this might happen, though. So you can see on this next slide, can we go back one? Sorry, give me a chance. The value of digital is understood, but pharma really struggles with execution. So what we want to do is kind of dig into that a little bit more. So you can see from this statistic, there is some good news to share. 91% of the respondents agreed that pharma digital products can add value for customers. I'm inclined to agree with them. If I didn't, I'd probably need to look for a new job. Everyone is aware that the direction the industry is moving in. They know that they're really only be doing more and more in kind of quote unquote digital space. Interestingly, those who struggle to get traction or investment for their digital products, the C-suite were the ones who are most strongly agreeing with the statement, which hopefully means that for any of you that have struggled, funding and securing resource for your future projects should get easier as they align with the rest of the business around the importance of digital. Because I think it's pretty well understood in the kind of digital specialist areas of pharma businesses, and marketing obviously they want to do more digital stuff, but it's important to have people in the C-suite that are supporting you. And we did find that there was a general kind of understanding there that that we could get support for it. So that's pretty good news. So yeah, but one of the things that we did pick up on from the report is that pharma does really suffer from having a short-term outlook and a lack of planning. 80% of people that we surveyed said that we get too distracted by building websites and apps, but we don't follow through on creating services that provide long-term engagement for HCPs and patients. So what can we learn from this? Well, there's no shortage of new pharma-backed apps and websites launched every year. In fact, I would conservatively estimate it at several thousand each year, never mind the apps. We don't seem to have a delivery problem. Many sites are launched. As Kerry was mentioning, the kind of getting it online seems to be the main success measure. But how many of them actually fulfill their intended purpose? How many of them get launched without a clear understanding of the customer needs? How many of them get launched without a promotional plan for acquiring users or a longer term plan that's just getting it done? How many of them offer any real value to those who manage to scour Google in order to find them? How many of them have a clearly defined purpose? And then like another question that we come across a lot as well is how many of them are being worked on in silos, and how many of them have the learning shared between teams. From the responses we received, it's difficult to answer any of those questions in the positive. And it's these questions and the missing answers from them which form the basis of a lot of the feedback that came through in the free text responses and the subsequent follow-up conversations that we've had. So there's an example of this on the next slide, where our medical affairs manager is talking about the need to embrace working with digital products which are innovative and add value to patients and customers. You need to view it as a long-term investment. Digital product will have greater value and longevity if the time is taken to find the correct path, which is often found after taking a few wrong turns. I could not agree with this statement more. I think it's one of the core things that we come up against in our work when either working with a new client or with a new team, taking the time to understand what it is that you're actually trying to achieve first and thinking about the life of the product post delivery is really, really important. So something definitely worth considering about. We want to ensure that your product launches with a clear purpose and a value proposition, the right team to manage it and improve it, including support from relevant ops and digital colleagues that you'll need. Plan for bringing new content to life to breathe into the site, a promotional plan to ensure that it can actually be found by people, ways of capturing user feedback and a plan for what to do with that, and a measurement plan so that we can have KPIs and know what's working and, almost more importantly, what's not working and what we can do about it. So that brings us neatly into our next headline. There are really big problems around setting KPIs and measuring success. You can replace problems with it's not happening in a lot of instances as well, if you want to push it up to the next level. When it comes to that level of success that our participants are experiencing from their product launches, which was especially low, measurement is a key influencing factor, obviously at both ends of the scale. 1 in 5 respondents said that measuring and tracking success would be the most important factor in improving the impact and success of their digital products in the next 2 years, which is huge. So 20%. And I think it probably should be more than that. It's going to need to be a real big focus. 10% of the respondents said they did not know the level of success their digital product launches have, as they do not measure anything at all, which is terrifying. And definitely an area where we can start to move the needle together as an industry, and really try and improve our learning from what's being done. This tells a story that really aligns with our own experience. It's relatively common for briefs to make it their way to us without really any thought being put into what is measured or why. We've had some resistance to putting this in from the start, and we've even seen a handful of sites get launched with none or very minimal analytics, just to be told that it will come later and that it had actually been de-scoped in order to hit the launch date. The point of this, though, is not really to cause alarm. I'm sure many people have seen this with their own eyes. Many of you here are probably the ones trying to do something about it. So if we have a quick look at some of the comments from the respondents in this area, I'm not going to read these word for word, but you can see they've been organized into the 2 columns, the ones that were experiencing low success rates and higher success rates. It shows the range of responses quite well, I think. So some organizations are demonstrating really solid capability. Others either don't know where to start or haven't started at all. Massive area of opportunity, though, and some things to be aware of. Even though some do set KPIs, many will fall into that set and forget trap, where you get a regular report, we don't necessarily come back and do anything with the information. Pharma must be one of the biggest hoarders of analytics in the world, but it would be great to see more actually done with the things that are found. The products and services need to be measured over time and continually improved. So once again, don't just look at your report once a week and tap yourself on the back for the things that look good. You really need to dig into and try and understand the why as much as possible. And obviously use and learn from the analytics, and don't use it as an excuse to not speak to your end customer. We're going to talk about that some more in one of the latter sections, but this really should be what you use to open your conversation with them rather than as an excuse to kind of hide behind and not do it before. So that's all from me.
Oh, this is my turn. Hi. So I'm guessing anyone here who's been to conferences recently definitely heard the patient-centric or centricity or patient engagement. But we found in the report that a lot of people, I think about 42% of them, thought that there was still quite a lot of work that needs to be done to embrace this customer first. I mean, we put customer because it really depends, where you're working, but we're really talking about HCPs or patients. So in terms of moving from a product first to your customer first. So I think there's a few things to think of. First of all, that as the medical affair person was saying, that failing is part of the process. So 4% doesn't sound maybe amazing, but if you think about tech startups, there's about 99% of them who would just fail. So it's not all bad, and it does take time to succeed also. So you need to. It's not just about, you know, post-launch. There's still more work to be done. So why make the move? If you stay with the product first mindset, I think the risk is that there's a lot of big bets, and you go and build something, you spend a lot of money, and once it goes live, this is what you expect to learn from it. So you kind of invested a lot in something without really knowing. Sorry, I'm not quite done. And moving to a customer first mindset is just a way to increase your chances, basically, is you will have insight-driven bets instead of just hoping for the best. And the fact that you understand the needs will allow you to set a stronger vision and strategy, which hopefully will help you iterate and move on. So yes, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. One of the things that came out is still quite a lot of insights that will come from internal opinion and expertise. So the industry, we spend quite a lot of time talking to stakeholders, basically. So if we go to the next slide, thank you. So it's not all bad, but the thing with this is the reason for it often is a bit easier. You know, we're not going to lie. Quite often, talking to stakeholders or your peer is a lot easier because you can get validation from them instead of maybe being challenged by HCPs or patients. The process, yes, can be challenging, especially with sign off, but quite often it's around the culture that just is not really geared up to customer centricity. So some of the reason why, this could be bad for you, there's definitely a confirmation bias that comes with this, where you're just using internal language, you get this whole, we've always done it this way, and it's just a way to just, have a comfortable kind of way of doing it. In terms of trends and stakeholders, I think trends especially is very important to look at trends, obviously, but often you can just see the tip of the iceberg, and you don't always know if the competitors, are doing a good job. As we hear John saying, some of them might have a website that went out. That doesn't mean it's successful. So copying them is not always the best way forward. So yeah, I can move to the next slide, sorry. So pharma teams definitely want to talk to end user, but they rarely do it. And I think this is definitely a common theme. It's a lot of people in the research we found that really wanted to speak to them, but ended up, the difference between 85% and 27% is quite striking. Like how many people actually ended up doing it. I'm seeing comment in the chat, but I let people deal with that. Sorry, if you want to go to the next slide. And really, there is, 1 in 5 said that in the organization, they never conducted user research in regard to their digital product, which is not too bad, but, so there's a lot of people making that effort. But if you go to next slide, Carrie, sorry. There are, although some people are trying, are really willing, there's a lot of barrier still that stops us from conducting research. But this can definitely be changed through education or culture change. So the lack of understanding of the process and this value is really, the reason for this is listed with everything that people selected, basically from 2 to 9, are the reason why there's a lack of understanding. There is this belief that, it's costly, it takes a long time, we'll never get that sign off by regulatory, and we don't really know what to do with it. So in terms of what we'd recommend is, well, first of all, in terms of investment, if you think about the money that is put in products or websites that do get launched and don't succeed, that's money you're not going to, get back. And building a website and a whole project, like a 2-year project, is probably more costly than spending some of this budget on talking to patients or HCPs. So it's all about perspective, I think, in terms of the cost of talking to your users. In terms of recruitment, there are specialists that can do this, so it's definitely a possibility. But what we really would recommend is to start small. I think if you start with something that is easy to test, so quite often we recommend usability testing. It's easier to action on it. It's also less of a big expectations where everyone, will be like, okay, we're going to conduct this big thing that's going to change the whole company. That's a lot of pressure. So I think definitely if it's the first time and you get a lot of pushback, start small. And something that is easy to fix, like your registration, for example, something like that you can really make a difference. And definitely talk to regulatory early on. If you're scared about being blocked, we've done that with some of our clients. We'll literally go to them and say, look, we want to do some research. How can we make this happen? And often we recommend it to place it as a market research because it's easier to go through, but the regulatory can definitely help you, define what is the easiest way to get there. And I think this is it. I'm trying to make sure that I don't overrun. Here you go. That's your turn. Yeah.
It is my turn. Thank you, Thomas. So just on to point 9, that there are big differences in how different teams approach digital. So no surprise that those that are more kind of customer facing, maybe in kind of medical affairs, might find, that they are more customer centric and they have the patient more at the heart of what they do. And then looking at things like commercial roles, because there's so much pressure to get products and services launched, they take a more kind of traditional mindset. So the learning here is that it would be great if medical affairs and commercial teams could work kind of closer together. Another stat that came out of the research was that 14% said that changing their reps mindset from a sales focus to a more customer centric focus was their biggest challenge in the next 2 years. So different mindsets going on, different teams approaching this differently and thinking about it differently. But there are obviously pockets of kind of teams and departments that are already moving towards that customer centric approach. And then the last point to round up on is that those teams and those departments and those individuals that are, the innovators that are leading the way, they do need more support. They need more support from the leaders in the business to give them the flexibility and the freedom to actually modernise and to look at other sectors, other consumer sectors that are, further ahead than pharma and healthcare, and to learn from those sectors and to look at the ways that they're working and to support them in their kind of quest to be more innovative. So again, like we said, there's pockets of great work being done, but big opportunities across the board here, just by making some small changes, and in some incidents quite big changes, but it is a lot to do with mindset. So just to wrap up on kind of 5 things to take away before we get into the Q&A. That was just a quote actually from one of our contributors. I'll let you read that before I move on to the wrap up. Again, all about mindset and that it's at the core of this. So yes, 5 things to take away. Be open to change. So that's not just mindset, but that's doing things differently, whether it's processes, whether it's the expertise you have in-house, and just being open to innovation. Be clear on what you're trying to do. John talked about this in terms of really understanding the purpose of your product and service, and making sure that everybody's aligned on that. Back to another point that John said, measure what matters, measure the things that are really going to make a difference to your business and to your customers. And obviously, Thomas talked a lot about, really understanding the users. So this is not what, we think they need, it's what they actually need. So it's speaking to them and then using, obviously, the great knowledge that sits in-house with the stakeholders, but really making sure that you look at your data, talk to your users and really understand them. And bring everybody on the journey with you. So try to move away from kind of a silo approach, learn from each other, kind of share knowledge and learnings, and do this as a more of a collective effort. rather than kind of working in silo. So lots of things there that we've shared. We hope you found that interesting. We see that there's some chat and there's also some questions. So I'm going to stop sharing the presentation and pass over to the Meetup team to get the discussion going.
Cool. Thanks so much, Kerry. We've got one question that's come in for John, actually. According to your research, there are lots of things that pharma organizations need to do to improve the success rate of their digital product launches. If there's one thing that they should do right now, what would it be?
It's a difficult one. Not a single answer for it, unfortunately. I wish I could say there is just one thing, but it's going to depend a lot on your business, the teams that you've got in place, where they are in terms of their digital transformation. There's a few things, though, that broadly speaking, most people could benefit from. So only putting your time and effort into launching new sites or platforms that have a really clearly defined purpose, and particularly ones that will actually create value for your customer rather than just kind of forcing more brand down their throats. Not launching anything without a plan for where you can maintain it and where the users are actually going to come from. Investing in the sort of organizational maturity, particularly around measurement and analytics, so they can support like less experienced people that are new to role, people that have changed roles when they come into looking at that, and getting really good at reporting, and most importantly then doing something about it afterwards rather than just kind of getting a real epic pile of dusty PDFs, which definitely exist, but let's not all fall for the same trap. And then also trying to get training and support for internal team, and actually making time for digital as well. I think it's hard for us when we work with clients that are kind of very focused on that maybe they're a brand manager and they've got a lot of things that they're supposed to be doing. Digital's only a very small part of it. If you don't give them a team and create time within that team for this to be done, you're always going to fall back to that checklist mentality, and just doing things just because it's on this checklist is not a route to success. So those are probably some of the highlights. I don't know if Tom or Kerry want to add any additional ones to that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It really depends on where you are on the journey. I would say definitely look at the purpose or whatever product you're in charge of, and if you know what that purpose is, to just check if there is anyone else already offering this, because I think this is a good start for anyone to just. There's a lot of things online. There's a lot of information. A lot of it is free, and easy to access. So it's just a bit of a reality check, like why do we exist, is a good question to start with. It might be overwhelming, but I think we forget sometimes to ask ourselves. We just go, I need a website. This is normal. Everyone's got an HP portal. So yeah, I would say that.
Isn't that the main reason for most brand managers or organizations to want a website, is because their competitors have one, so we need one, right? I mean, that's the mindset, isn't it? Or it's just a line item on the marketing plan that someone needs without actually thinking, why would they come here? And we all know there's some significant challenges around the actual value and impact that pharma websites have. I posted a while ago saying, I can't think, it might be your post, John, but we see millions of pounds spent on websites that literally, you can find that information elsewhere. Yes, you do need a website, just as a car company needs a website, but you also need third parties to sort of support your view. But just having one because you need one, because you think you need one, tends to be the default mindset. So yeah, it is what is the real purpose of whatever it is you're doing. And I completely agree on the research. The number of times back in the day when we used to make apps many years ago, the number of times where we get a brief and we just quickly search the App Store and say, well, here's 15 others. Well, how are you different?
Yeah,
it is quite brutal. That's the truth of it. There's definitely, and I think also we were looking at more and more of HCPs, will be digital native, and I think they're kind of, just it's always been like this. I'm used to it. They're challenging this also at their own level. There's so many of them, who start having their own YouTube channels, and creating their own content, and all want to be involved in creating new products. So the expectations are really rising really quickly.
I mean, your competition isn't the other pharma companies all the time. It's the people's time on apps that actually work and that serve a purpose and that are useful. And, look, where I've got apps on my phone that some of them we made back in the day, and all the rest of it. And some doctors will be on their back screen and they go to it once or twice, like a dosage calculator. How long do they need that unless it's super complicated? But I have if before we've addressed that one, I know there's a couple of questions. We'll come to those. I just wanted to address the elephants in the room in terms of our industry. And they may not be the obvious elephants. I know I've used that analogy and they should be obvious because they're an elephant. But I see two really big problems I'll be interested to see. And they very much came through in your report. First one is our inability to iterate, right? So for years, we have to have final form sign off. It's all done. It's this massive effort till it's done. And there's almost like a feeling, whether it be a print version, a conference, and whatever it is, it's kind of like done, I'm out, because it took so long to get here. And yet we all know a good digital product needs to iterate, evolve on user feedback and all the rest of it. It should never just be left. Otherwise, it's very quickly out of date. But we know that iteration is a challenge, both the mentality of our industry, but also the processes. So there's that one. I'm going to add another one because that'll be interesting in your view, which is churn, right? So our average brand managers are in position 2 to 3 years. But we know a good digital product, especially the analytics around its use, takes time to build up its user base. It takes time to learn from those users and improve it. But again, in a bit of a fire and forget way, and you nailed this here, which is success is often the launch, not its usefulness. It's like, when you think about brand managers and their CVs, it's often, I launched this. That's a really weird thing to say. It's actually, what impact did it have? So I wondered if you could comment and have a think about the report around the challenge around iterating on a regular basis and the product owners, let's call them, that maybe aren't in post long enough to really look after it and invest in it.
The iteration point is a really interesting one, actually. It's linked very much to something we've been talking about the last few days, which is around like split testing and A/B testing, which is something that's incredibly normal in many industries. Yet trying to explain to one of your colleagues why you need to approve 2 versions of something or multiple versions of something can be quite exhausting. When it's hard enough to get one version of it approved a lot of the time. And I think that's kind of linked to the point you make about iteration isn't the version that you've put live first the best version? And why not? And why did you put it in and go to the effort of getting it online if it's not the best? And I think there is a bit of a mentality that once something's approved, you've expended so much energy to get to that point that why would you ever touch it again? And I think those things they are getting in the way of innovation. They're getting in the way of this sort of continuous improvement mentality that I think much of the digital world has moved towards. The launch day of your product is day 0. Everything that comes before it is a completely separate thing. And once you get to that day 0, that's when the real work begins of actually getting people to use it, delivering value, reporting on it, explaining to your boss why it was a good idea in the first place. And that should be the stuff that ends up on people's CVs, not necessarily just to getting it launched. So yeah, it is a challenge. It is something that is going to take a bit of a mindset shift in order for people to work around. And we're going to need to bring all of our colleagues on a journey. It's not going to be just enough for some troublemakers in digital teams to do that.
Brilliant.
I mean, that's your perfect. I don't want to use this wrong analogy. I'm doing bad analogies today. I was going to say your perfect storm, but I mean your perfect team, right? You need a open-minded, agile thinking medic. You need a product manager with vision. And I mean brand manager, product owner with vision. Then you need
some discipline.
Yeah,
as well, I would say.
That's a longevity in the company.
Yeah, and then above that is that C-level. I think that's a really important thing. Is this? And you said that right at the beginning. That the eyes from the top on let's go digital, which COVID has accelerated, is a blessing and a curse for a lot of people, because the amount of digital projects, I mean transformational projects, not product projects, like there's so many of them that people are being project burnout and all the rest of it. But getting that C-level, we believe this has value, and then communicating that to win hearts and minds of all stakeholders. Importantly, you mentioned the sales team. If this is a digital product to help them or a digital product to help patients that are part of the service package, they do need to believe in it for it to work. They're one of our strongest promotional tools of both the brand and the product. Yeah. C-level can overcome churn as well. That means if eyes are on that project above and beyond the individual.
Okay, we've got a couple of other questions. There's one for Kerry. What are the companies doing to address the Salesforce mindset change?
Well, I think this is going to be, a kind of hardish thing to do. But I think when we're talking to our clients, it's all about education on what digital can bring, and that the sales team can really work in harmony with digital. So the physical and the digital can work really well together. And actually, when that happens, it means that the sales team can have much more rewarding and engaging conversations with the customers that they're speaking to. And I think, so actually, that it's not a case that the role of the rep is going to kind of disappear. In fact, it'll be a much more enjoyable experience, because what digital will do is kind of take away some of the work they're doing and leaving them just to have much more engaging conversations with their customers. So it's really down to education. And I think, the more joined up we can all be, James, you just mentioned this as well. I think it's all about kind of education, joining up, people understanding the value, seeing how things can work together, not against each other. But it is something that will take a little bit of time. As we know, any kind of change can be quite daunting and scary. It is a culture change. And again, it needs to come from the top to encourage kind of different behaviour and to make people feel comfortable with the changes that are happening. John, Thomas, anything to add on that?
I think that's a pretty good answer, to be honest. Not a huge amount to add. I think the only thing I would say is that there's a couple of things you can try and do. So obviously get in there early. And explain your vision, and publish your roadmap, and be really transparent, and sort of over communicate to reduce the oxygen, take all the oxygen out of the air, from the fear. And then also to, build on what Kerry was saying, like helping the sales force to have like really high value interactions, and letting digital tools pick up the slack as like a 24/7 BAU resource. That seems to be the direction that most of the industry is going. I don't think that's going to be a huge surprise to anybody, but it feels like quite a safe space where we can help Salesforce to do things that they're really good at, and also help HCPs by being more available, more sort of expedient with our responses, getting the things that they need more quickly. So I think that's sort of that feels like the direction of travel for the industry, and I think it's one that we can definitely get behind.
Can I second that? So Mernaz Campbell, who asked that question, hi Mernaz, and I have had this conversation a lot around Salesforce engagement, and that's the space that Mernaz works in and excels in. So, I mean, if you boil it down, it's the same question we should be asking about our end customers, right? What is the job to be done? What's in it for me? And it's the same for the field team. You both touched on it, which is, there is a fear that digital processes, products will replace us, right? That every time we launch a dashboard, etc., there's that initial question. But for me, obviously, technology is there to enable the field team, as you say. But every single one of the product launches, the new tools, the new process, it needs to be what's it do for me. And what it does is, just as you said, it either makes the job easier, or it raises your profile, or more successful. And at the end of the day, we all look for that. We can all talk altruistically about better patient outcomes, but on a daily basis, what you think about is it going to cause me more work or less work? Or if it is more work, will it be more enjoyable? And that's what we need to bear in mind.
Yeah, there's actually another question from Marinaz as well. Says to Kerry, just do you think the company's considering UX in design of their internal training to consider user preferences?
I think might be one that I'll pass to John. I think he'll probably be able to answer this better than I can.
Well, fair enough. We should really defer to our UX expert, but I can start and then we'll see where we end up. So, I think internal training and comms is something we get asked to help with a lot. I think it's something that as people that are creating products, particularly at a global level where things are going to get rolled out, we do often get brought in for either sort of internal comms and promotion as well as training. Trying to make things accessible and not hidden behind hundreds of pages of really bad intranet is normally kind of where we start. So getting to people at the point in their journey when they're going to need the information. We've got a number of conversations with clients going on at the moment about when's the right time to start making change. And if you're launching a global platform, people need a bit of notice to be able to get in front of it and bring themselves on the journey as well, whether they've got a budget for it, whether they need to put the tools and the people in place to be able to use it. So I think the UX of that as a whole is definitely something that we would consider, like put as much attention into as we would for the external customer. trying to make it easy for people to say yes to is where we've always ended up. Because the last thing you want to do is create kind of people that are purposefully detracting because they didn't feel involved or didn't feel like you kind of asked them their opinion, or they didn't have an opportunity to learn or pick up on it the same as everybody else. So yeah, a bit of a convoluted answer, but I think putting as much care into the internal comms as external is probably a good place to start.
Fantastic. Okay, we've got an anonymous question here. When analyzing the data stroke Google Analytics, what should be the key things to look out for? I don't know who wants to answer that, or maybe all three of you.
We could do a whole hour on this.
I guess it depends what your objectives are, I guess, in the first place, and that might vary also where you are in your product life cycle. If you're just looking to have adoption or increase engagement, I think I would say, because I'm not a expert in this field, but analytic will never give you the why behind it. So I think for me, the key thing is to just remember that this is step one, and you might get some information about what is happening. So, drop off, churn, things like this. But the only way to understand why this is happening is to go and actually have conversations with your users. So yeah, I guess it's not really answering the question, but I think it's quite hard to tell you what to focus on, except if we go into like the practice of it.
Yeah, we can add a couple of high-level things. I would recommend reading up on lagging and leading indicators, and not just relying on lagging indicators. So lagging indicators, basically any metric that measures past performance. We want to start looking at leading indicators wherever you can, because they're a predictive measure of future performance. So there's loads of good resources out there if you want to have a little Google around and see about that. Basically, lagging indicators are kind of linked to what James was saying before around, I've launched it, we did a thing, the thing has happened. But really, in order to be able to give an early indication of your future performance, these are the ones that are going to help you move more closer towards your goals. So these metrics are the ones that will really keep you in touch with your strategy, basically, and they should be really closely linked to your strategy. Try and measure change as well, if you can, rather than necessarily just looking at single points in time. So if you just pick out individual moments, you can kind of make any statistic prove anything, really. What's the famous Guinness advert? 81% of statistics are made up. Something along those lines. I've just done it again there. If you're not measuring trends and reporting on that, then what you're really doing is just picking a moment and deciding what narrative you're going to fit around it. So that, I guess, that would kind of be the two places I'd recommend starting. But yeah, we could and will do a whole hour on this in the near future. So
if I can come in a bit on that, because there's another question in which talks about content effectiveness, so which is related to all of this. And in our space, it's all about sales aids and rep triggered emails. So it's in the rep channel, but it could be website or product or whatever it might be. Is too often we get people looking at how many slides were shown and what was on it. How many slides were shown for how long to what doctor. That's your basic analytics, right? But that's meaningless unless you know what's on the slides. And it's even, how are you tagging your content, right? How are you prioritizing what's important, etc.? Because as you say, we hoard a lot of data. There's an awful lot of data gathered, but is it really looked at, and is it being done in a sensible way? So you all said this at the beginning, which is, what is it that I want to learn, right, in the first place, right? Designing your content to help you find those, if it's around customer insights. If it's purely content performance, how are you understanding that content? You aligning to brand key messages, or is it like just basic stuff like content, like efficacy, safety, guidelines? Or is it more sophisticated than that, and it's around your brand key messages? And then I agree, it's also about speaking to your users. For us, in our case, it's the sales teams. So we talk about 3, 6, and 12. At 3 months, you won't have very much data at a Salesforce level in terms of numbers of users to speak to them about it, get your feedback. At 6 months, you'll have some data to challenge that feedback and the subjective feedback. And at 12 months, you'll have enough to make some decisions about changing. But it only really works if you know which slides relate to which key brand message, maybe some granular analytics and reveals, etc. That allows you to iterate and evolve rather than just, how many times it was opened, or how many times it was visited. So thinking at that next level of insights around the data.
Cool. There was, I don't know if that's been answered now, that there was you've probably seen that you mentioned the question, James, what are the key metrics to consider to measure content effectiveness? I don't know if you guys have got something that we can give some top tips on that.
You can only measure the effectiveness of something if you know what it was designed to do in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think that's exactly. So what is it that you're trying to achieve? Start with that, and then really look at what the leading indicators towards making that change happen will be. And that's really the only way that you can measure that. If whoever the anonymous attendee is wants to talk some more about this with some specific examples and feels comfortable sharing stuff, then definitely reach out to us. So happy to talk about it more. But yeah, you really do have to understand like what's the next step in the user journey and how are you contributing with this content towards moving that person into the next step in that user journey. Without understanding those two things, it's really hard to say sort of more broadly. But yeah, we'd be looking at sort of finding a way to measure contribution towards the overall change that you're looking to do. And that's really the only way you can report on value, which is definitely something we'd recommend rather than necessarily just like, we got 14 more clicks this month.
Yeah.
So what? Good for you.
100%. And in simple, in old terms, what we mean by user journey in sales, we talk about adoption ladder, right? Mm-hmm. What we're setting out to do by engaging with customers is to move them from unaware to treatment trial to regular user to champion, whatever adoption ladder you want. So if you've got well-tagged content, you've got a good mechanism for moving to say when a customer's moved across, throw a bit of segmentation in there, or personas as we might call them now, but segmenting to understand. And then if with well-tagged content, you do the analysis to say what content via what channel at what frequency moved this customer type from naive to trial, from trial to regular, from regular to champion. And that, if in the ideal, well, I don't know very many people manage to pull this one off, but if we get that right, then we might move into predictive analytics where you can say, right, so a customer I've never met before that's in this, what do I share at what point to move them forward, rather than what did it, now it's what will do it. And if we can blend the rep roles with insights from websites that inform the rep and vice versa, in an ideal world where we're bringing the learnings from the website into the rep and the rep's interactions with the customer into recommendations on the website in terms of what to look at next. That's the utopian data-driven customer engagement we'd all like to see, but feels quite a long way off, to be honest.
Yeah, so sales teams in other businesses have managed to achieve this. This is not completely a forbidden pasture. It's it's a place that hopefully we can get to. Just having that understanding in the first place is really the only way you can measure it, though. So yeah, definitely.
Cool. I don't know if there's any more questions from our audience. There we go. James has got one.
Well, I count as audience, kind of, because it was a great presentation, Barry. Thank you for doing that, and thank you for doing the report in the first place. I mean, it wasn't insignificant, I imagine, in terms of investment, both of time and resource. So thank you. I have one around co-creation, because we constantly struggle with this. I'm a massive advocate of engaging the end user in this, and for us that means sales teams. The reason being that it's twofold, right? And I often, when we're talking to brand teams, I put it in this context. Why do we do advisory boards with HCPs when we've got new data, right? We do it for two reasons. One is to get their insights into what data is important or how they respond to it, test our key messaging. But we also do it for another reason, right? Don't tell compliance, but we actually do it because we want them to get excited about that data that's coming. We want them to start thinking about it. So we're kind of preloading that. I feel very much the same about internal audiences for product launches as in digital products, but also the sales aid, which is if they have built equity in the process and they feel like they're part of that project, then it's a much more, as a softer landing when it comes out, and maybe you've even created some advocates and champions. That's the ideal world. On the other hand, you can get pulled in every direction. Unless so my question to you is, at what point do you engage with them? How structured is your thinking? Because as Henry Ford would say, before the car, if I've asked someone what they'd want, they just want a faster horse. And that's courtesy of Paul Sims, who quoted that one on a post a couple of days on LinkedIn when we were talking about co-creation. And there is that challenge, isn't there, right? Do they really know best?
Yeah, no, that's a valid point. Well, I think this is sometimes I think it's something that scares people, is to think like, well, why are we letting those people, do our job? And that's not really the purpose of user research. So I think having clear goals and right from the beginning is important. And I think talking to them as soon as possible, to be honest, as soon as you've got an idea and someone got excited, going and talking to your audience is probably step one, I would say. In terms of the quote that you gave us, the right answer to this would be, why do you want a faster car? And then from there, you would just understand, their needs and what's happening. And it might be they just want to show off, and they're single and they're 40, and they're like, I want to show off. But that's the mindset. It's trying to understand why they want the thing that they want, more than just implementing what they're telling you. Because if you do this, there's a high risk that you're just going to end up building something that doesn't work. But yeah, as soon as possible, and we recommend quite often, little and often. I think a bit like, I was going to say eating fruits, but probably not. But yeah, don't leave it to like being one big thing, because it's going to be too much overwhelming information. And I think that's what happens often. You just leave it, and then there's so much to deal with. There's so much to change that it's just going to put your project plan, throw it out the window. So. Do it often so that you can prioritize what can be prioritized, and you just chip away like little things. So yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Early as well, before you spend the 250k building it, preferably. Like yes, talk to them before, if possible. And even if you can't, have 5 HCPs in a workshop with you all day while you're doing some co-creation, like there are cheap and quick ways that you can get just enough research done to be able to take that feedback through. And then as long as you go and loop back and do the work to actually test the concepts before you go ahead into a full build, you'll still get the benefit of that. So obviously it'd be great to have 5 incredibly busy and important oncologists in a room with you while you're developing something for oncology, but it's not always realistic, is it? So we have to find ways around it and be creative in order to still have their voice represented. So there's lots of ways you can do that. And yeah, definitely something we try to build into every project we do where we can.
Sorry, Tom, I was just going to say, I think it's also, kind of demystifying the myths that it's really hard to do user research and it costs a lot of money and it's hard to reach those people. We know, working with lots of different clients and speaking to their customers, whether they're HCPs or patients, that it's actually not as hard as people think it is. But that goes back to, understanding the value and the education internally. But completely agree with your point, James, that, that the more you can take people on the journey, the more engaged they will be and the deeper the connection there'll be over time. But it is something that does have to happen over time. Just as measurement has to happen over time, so does that connection with the users. Sorry, Tom.
No, I was just gonna add, like, definitely, I think the power of having HCP or patient in the room is hard to hide, because those people most likely won't be scared to just tell you how it is, and I think this is more of a reality check. I think often I remember being at a conference for patient centricity, and there was one patient that was involved on the panel, and you could feel the chill in the room when she was questioning some of the the practice or the benefits, and it's great. It's just remind you that who you're working for, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I remember way back in the day when we built a mental health app called Crisis Card, which is for people going into a bad state, and they can send it. This was before you could do it through the iOS system, etc. Send an SMS text message with GPS location in case they need picking up. And we were being all PC about whether we want to call it Crisis Card and maybe hide it under a nice name. And like the patients we were working with, they just said, no, if I'm in a crisis, I want someone to find me on my phone under crisis, right? Don't baby us. It's like that kind of, so it is really useful. And also, Tom, I'm absolutely stealing your response to the Henry Ford quote, which is absolutely, it's spot on, right? Yeah. It wasn't wrong to ask that. If they had said, I want a faster horse, it's like, why? I really, really like that response.
Absolutely. Cool. I don't know if there's any more questions from anybody. If not, look out for our next Pharma MCM in October. We'll be releasing the dates and the topic quite soon. I'd just like to say thank you very much to Marilise, who's pulled all this together today and has helped us to make it happen. So thanks very much. And thanks to James, as always, for helping out and co-chairing and making it all happen too. So hopefully it's been useful. We have recorded this, so we will be then sharing it and letting you guys know where it's at. If you guys don't mind, we'll share your emails as well if you want to get in touch directly. We're all about building the communities and helping everyone to get in touch with each other and making it all work for everybody. So thanks to everybody for joining. It's been wonderful, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.